Arsenal just won the Premier League. They already had Declan Rice. They already had Martin Zubimendi. They already had Martin Odegaard and Eberechi Eze. So why would the champions spend around £75 million on Bruno Guimaraes? Why buy another elite central midfielder when midfield was already one of Arsenal's greatest strengths? That is the question everyone should be asking, because this transfer is not really about repairing a weakness. It is about something much more ambitious. Arsenal are trying to turn control into dominance, and if Mikel Arteta gets this right, England may be looking at one of the most complete midfield units the Premier League has seen in years. To understand why Bruno matters, you first have to understand what Arsenal already were. This was not a struggling team searching for an identity. Arsenal finished the 2025-26 season as Premier League champions with 85 points, 7 clear of Manchester City. They scored 71 league goals, conceded only 27, and David Raya kept 19 clean sheets. Rice and Zubimendi were already fundamental to that machine, giving Arteta strength, tactical discipline, and control through the center of the pitch. Arsenal had also become increasingly comfortable using a double pivot rather than depending exclusively on the traditional 4-3-3 that defined earlier versions of Arteta's team. So when Arsenal officially completed Bruno Guimaraes' move from Newcastle United on August 8, 2026, for a fee widely reported at around £75 million, this was not the champions desperately searching for someone to rescue their midfield. This was a champion looking at its strongest department and deciding it could become even stronger. And if you enjoy football stories that go beyond transfer headlines and actually explain what the deal changes on the pitch, subscribe, because this is where the Bruno signing becomes really interesting. Bruno's defensive numbers immediately reveal something Arteta clearly values. During the 2025-26 Premier League season, he averaged 5.7 ground duels won per 90 minutes. Rice averaged 2.8, Zubimendi 2.6, and Mikel Merino 4.5. Bruno also won 1.6 tackles per 90, higher than Arsenal's central midfielders in the Premier League comparison, while his tackle success rate stood at 69.4%. Then there are recoveries. Bruno averaged 5 per 90, with only Rice at 5.2, producing a higher figure among Arsenal's midfield options. But the importance of those numbers goes beyond simply saying Bruno tackles people. Arsenal were already one of England's most aggressive teams when possession was lost. Their structure was designed to squeeze the pitch, attack second balls, and recover possession before opponents could escape. Bruno potentially makes that approach even more aggressive. Imagine Arsenal losing the ball 30 yards from goal. Instead of immediately retreating, Bruno attacks the receiver, Rice closes the next passing lane, Zubimendi protects the space behind them, and suddenly the opponent who thought they were beginning a counterattack is defending again. That is why this signing makes sense. Not because Rice cannot defend. Not because Zubimendi cannot control midfield. Bruno gives Arteta another midfielder who seems completely comfortable when a football match becomes messy. When the structure breaks, when tackles are flying, and when possession becomes a battle, Bruno does not simply survive the chaos. He appears to enjoy it, and this is where the Bruno story becomes much more interesting, because Arsenal have not spent £75 million on a destroyer who simply wins the ball and gives it to somebody else. Bruno completed 12 accurate forward passes per 90 last season. Odegaard was at 11.5, Rice at 11.4, and Zubimendi at 11.1. Bruno also completed 3 long passes per 90, again showing his willingness to move possession forward rather than simply recycling it sideways. That matters enormously against modern Premier League pressing structures. When an opponent presses Arsenal and commits 4 or 5 players forward, the first pass after Arsenal break that pressure can completely change the attack. Bruno can receive under pressure, protect the ball, turn away from an opponent, and immediately look forward. Suddenly Bukayo Saka is isolated against a full cutback. Suddenly a striker is running into a defense that has not had time to reset. Suddenly Rice is arriving into space rather than helping Arsenal escape their own half. That is the sequence Arteta will want to see repeatedly. Win it, turn, play forward, attack. Arsenal have spent years becoming one of Europe's best teams at controlling possession. Bruno could help them become more dangerous in the moments when the game is temporarily out of control, and sometimes, those moments decide championships mushaways. Now we arrive at the most fascinating question of the entire transfer. How do Rice, Zubimendi, and Bruno actually fit together? The first possibility is perhaps the most obvious. Rice and Bruno in a double pivot with Odegaard ahead of them. That combination would give Arsenal enormous physical presence while still providing two midfielders capable of moving the ball forward. Rice could hold while Bruno attacks higher spaces, and 5 minutes later they could switch. Bruno could drop to receive from the centre-backs while Rice carries into the attacking third. The opposition would not have one obvious player to press because both can operate deeper and both can advance. But then there is the heavyweight configuration. Zubimendi at the base, Rice on one side and Bruno on the other. That may not be the midfield Arsenal use every week against teams defending with 10 players behind the ball, but imagine it away against Manchester City, at Anfield, or in a Champions League knockout match. Zubimendi controls position, Rice controls space, Bruno controls confrontation. That trio could make Arsenal incredibly difficult to play through. Then, there is a third possibility. Bruno plays deeper, Rice is released as a more aggressive number 8, and Odegaard or Eze operates ahead of them. That might be the most important feature of this entire signing. Arteta does not necessarily have one new Arsenal midfield. He has several. Different opponents can now receive different versions of the champions, and that tactical flexibility could become priceless across a season involving the Premier League, Champions League, and domestic cups. And strangely enough, the players who benefit most from Bruno's arrival may not be Rice or Zubimendi. They could be Martin Odegaard and Eberechi Eze. Odegaard's 2025-26 league campaign was disrupted by injuries, and he finished with 1 goal and 6 assists across 24 Premier League appearances. Arsenal consequently had to find different ways of creating chances, with Eze offering a more unpredictable and individual attacking presence. Now imagine either player operating with even greater midfield security behind them. If Bruno can win duels, Rice can cover huge spaces, and Zubimendi can provide positional control. Odegaard may be able to spend more time in the areas where Arsenal actually want him, between the lines, closer to Saka and facing the opposition goal. Eze creates a different problem. He wants to dribble. He wants to commit defenders. He is willing to take risks that can open a match. Those risks become easier to tolerate when the structure behind him is protected by elite midfielders. That means Arteta can begin every important game by asking a different question. Does he want Odegaard's orchestration? Eze's improvisation? Does he want both? Or does he sacrifice one of them and dominate midfield with Rice, Bruno, and Zubimendi? The Bruno signing does not simply add another player. It increases the number of tactical questions Arsenal can force opponents to answer. Then there is another part of Bruno's game that could be decisive over 38 league matches: production. Bruno scored 9 Premier League goals for Newcastle last season and added 5 assists. That is 14 direct league goal involvements from central midfield. Arsenal are therefore adding someone who can tackle, recover possession, progress the ball, and still arrive in areas where matches are won. That versatility becomes even more interesting when set pieces are considered. Arsenal scored a Premier League record 19 goals from corners during 2025-26, and dead ball situations have become one of the defining weapons of Arteta's team. Bruno took 44 corners for Newcastle last season, with 25% producing a shot from the first involvement, according to the Premier League's analysis. Rice and Saka already give Arsenal elite delivery. Bruno adds another option. He was also one of the most fouled players in the division, which could create even more free-kick opportunities for a team already terrifying opponents from dead balls. And this is where the transfer moves beyond individual statistics and into the title race. Arsenal won the league by 7 points last season, but retaining the Premier League is historically far more difficult than winning it once. Manchester City will respond. Manchester United will believe they can close the gap. Liverpool, Chelsea, and the rest of the league will evolve. Arsenal cannot assume that last season's level will automatically be enough again. Champions who stand still are eventually caught. Arsenal have chosen the opposite approach. Their strongest area has become stronger. Bruno Guimaraes was not signed because Arsenal's midfield was weak. He was signed because Arsenal's ambitions have changed. Winning one Premier League title cannot be the end of this project. Now they have to defend it, challenge deeper in Europe, survive injuries, control transitions, break low blocks, and still have enough quality remaining when April and May arrive. Rice gives Arsenal power. Zubimendi gives them structure. Odegaard gives them imagination. Eze gives them unpredictability. And Bruno may be the player capable of connecting all of those qualities. Arsenal have not simply added another midfielder. They may have created several different elite midfields inside the same squad. And that is why this £75 million transfer could be much bigger than it initially appears. The question now is not whether Arsenal have enough quality in midfield. The question is whether Arteta can turn that quality into an era. So tell me in the comments, if Arsenal played Manchester City tomorrow, would you start Rice, Bruno, and Zubimendi together, or would you keep Odegaard in the midfield? And if you want more Arsenal transfer breakdowns, tactical documentaries, and European football stories, subscribe and stay with the channel.